Welcome to koam-presents, a podcast produced by KOAM News Now and the 4 states' most watched news team.
I chose to invest money into a renewable energy resource like solar panels, so that I can sleep at night knowing that I am doing my part to create a cleaner earth for my grandchildren. CDL made that decision easier by educating me on how I can save money and how renewable energy can save the environment. Because what I do today matters tomorrow. Call CDL today to see how you can make a difference.
Welcome back. The last episode. Here we are behind the desk. We've made it this far. Have to thank our sponsors before we get into it. CDL Electric. Make sure you can check them out for any of your electric, plumbing, heating, anything like that at cdlelectric.com. Grand Lake Casino. Great place to hang out with friends and enjoy yourself at grandlakecasino.com. And obviously you can tell if you're watching us, maybe if you're listening, I don't know. We are at JB downtown here in Joplin on Main Street next to Wilder's. It's an awesome place, a great environment. It's family friendly. They're having live music. No official open date yet. You got to check them out on Facebook. JB's Downtown. They have an open house this Sunday from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. and just a cool environment. We're happy to be hanging out here. And with the Dowster.
I'm glad to be here.
Glad to be here. I know we were talking. It went by pretty quick. I mean,
yeah.
six weeks.
6 episodes.
6 episodes.
Covering a bit of history.
I would say quite a bit.
Yeah.
I've learned a lot, and I mean,
it's been interesting to kind of revisit and rethink about some things that I had sort of forgotten about or hadn't thought about much.
Walk down memory lane. Mm-hmm. Today we talked a lot about the 4 state, which obviously we are servants to our community. Servant might be a strong word, but we like to serve for our community to provide information and entertainment and things like that. But we're going to talk about a little KOAM history.
How about serving our community? Do you know what KOAM, why those letters were chosen?
I do not.
Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Missouri.
That seems super obvious.
Well, I know,
I feel like
not everybody knows.
That.
It doesn't immediately come to mind. But yeah, we serve at the corners of those 4 states.
That makes a lot of because I always think of just the call letters.
No, I know.
Yeah.
It was very deliberate.
It was. Mm-hmm. I mean, gosh, back in the 50s?
1953, December 13th is when KOAM TV went on the air. Actually, there would have been KOAM radio prior to that.
Yeah, and those records, I mean...
Go ahead.
No, there's records. I mean, it's a mixed bag, I would say, of records as far as what we do and don't have. There's stuff I've seen just working here, but I don't really know what our process was back in the day for keeping records.
This is very limited.
Really?
When this station went on the air, most of what went on was live. Pretty much everything that originated from the station was live. It
just
wasn't
straight to the people and
correct.
Nothing, yeah.
I mean, and they had newscasts from pretty much day one. They had musical shows, live in studio musical shows. One was Circle 7 Jamboree, and more famously, more long lasting was one called Melody Matinee.
I have heard of that one.
Okay,
yeah,
that
was
was
a big name.
Yeah, it started shortly after the station went on the air. This was the first station in the area, by the way, and then continued until 1985. By the time it went off the air, it was the longest running daily local music show in the nation. At one time, everybody had these things. Mm-hmm. There was also a kids program called Fun Club, where you had puppets in the studio and a host, and he would introduce cartoons, and you had some kids in the audience on bleachers, and you'd interview the kids.
That was done at the station.
Done at the station,
wow.
Which also was on the air from the inception of the station or shortly afterward until the mid-'80s, I believe, also till 1985, when there was a change of ownership and rethinking about what our mission should be. But as far as records, well, because those shows were live, there weren't many records. There were maybe a few photographs. And videotape in the early days hadn't even been invented yet. And then even when it was, these shows, because they were live, they were infrequently recorded, and if they were, the tapes were generally erased and reused.
Yeah.
Or the formats would change over a period of years. And in fact, after those shows went off the air, Melody Matinee and Fun Club, people would ask us, they say, boy, I would really like to find an episode of Fun Club from this particular date because I was on it, or my mom was on it, or my grandfather was on it. We say, we don't have it. We don't have anything. We're sorry. And when I would talk to civic groups over the years, and they would always ask about those shows.
Where are they?
Where are they? And all we had, the final episode of Melody Matinee in 85, somebody had the foresight to record that, so we had that. And beyond that, we had a few seconds of Fun Club. I mean, I think less than 20 seconds.
Yeah.
That had somehow survived on some tape. And then later, the 2010s or so, somebody from Parsons pointed out that they had an old kinescope recording of Fun Club, a recording that was actually made off of a TV. But it was kind of grainy. It wasn't great. And then we hit a gold mine. This was about 2016, I think. Our longtime digital wonder, graphics artist, and the guy who's worn a lot of hats at the station, Dale Switzer, has been around since 1975. He was told that he had seen online someone was selling a film canister, a couple of film canisters, and they were labeled KOAM, and one also said Fun Club. I thought,
No
whoa,
kidding.
they were film, and he looked at the label online. I think it was through eBay or something, and it had the name Jack Lawrence. Well, Jack Lawrence was a guy who had been an engineer at our station from the earliest days, from 1953 or shortly thereafter, up through most of the 80s. He had passed. And it turns out that these film canisters had somehow ended up in a box of stuff that maybe at his estate sale, and then it ended up at a flea market. And at any rate, some people were selling this. Dale jumped on it. He bought it. And he loads up this film in a film projector. See what's on there. He had no idea.
Did we have a film projector?
Yes, he had access. He had access to one. It was an old film. It was an old film projector. I think there was some question about whether it would work, but it did. The film was kind of brittle and would break, and he had to splice it back together. But Lance, it was amazing because it had footage. A lot of it from 1963, and it showed things like Fun Club and Melody Matinee and bits of old newscasts and more. And it wasn't exactly what was seen on TV. It was actually better in a couple of ways, because you would see the show, but you would see it was behind the scenes of the show. It was shot by Jack Lawrence. Again, he was an engineer at the time.
Yeah.
But you would see the show, and you would see the photographer, the camera operators. We saw the control room, the master control. And even better, it was all in color. Wow. These were programs that had never been seen in color, even when they were broadcasting, because we were broadcasting, at least in the early days, in just black and white.
Yeah.
And Dale was talking to me about this, and we were excited about this. And I convinced him, I said, this has to be a news series.
Oh, definitely.
It's not just interesting to us. It's got to be interesting to a lot of people. And this is a part of not just our station history, but a four-state history of KOAM, Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Missouri history. And we need to get this out there. And so it became a 5-part report on the discovery of the reels, and then we broke it up into the musical shows and Fun Club and the news production. And we took some of this film, put it on a laptop, and I took it to various people who were parts of the early days. I took it to Virgil Glenn, who was 90-ish, who was a performer on Melody Matinee, and showed it to him. And showed it to Tom Freeman, had been a host of Fun Club, and his widow Joanne was still around. I showed it to her. And Merle Allen, who was he's well known in the Joplin community. He's involved in lots of civic things and hospitals, charities, and so on, but little known by most people. In the 1960s, for a time as a young man, he was an anchor at KOAM.
Oh.
And I showed it to him. And every one of these people were just delighted. They were thrilled. They talked about the history of the station. And I took it to a woman, Jackie Steinbauer, who is the daughter of Jack Lawrence, who shot this film. And we looked at some of that footage of Fun Club, 1963, December of 63. It was a Christmas episode. Again, it's in color. And we see these kids in the stands, and there's one girl, pre-adolescent girl, who's walking her little toddler sister up to meet Santa and put her on his lap. And this was a surprise to all of us, including Jackie. She says, "That's me, and that's my baby sister." She had no memory of the event.
Really?
But when she saw that, it was emotional to see, here we are, Fun Club, we're seeing behind the scenes, but we're seeing her. This was film that was shot by her father. And a lot of the film, most of the films, the footage on the film, was actually documenting Christmas parties that were in the studio over the years, from the 1950s up through the late 1960s. And she was in some of those too, as were the others. So you kind of see them behind the scenes.
Yeah.
But when we saw the film of Jackie with her sister, it occurred to us that this wasn't just Jack Lawrence, TV engineer, documenting the history of a TV station. This was a loving father documenting a family moment. And when we saw all of this footage of all of these Christmas parties, and we showed it to all of these people, they invariably said the same thing. We were family. This was family. This was family. This was part of our broader KOAM family. That's how they viewed that time. That's how many of us still view the station.
Definitely.
And for those of us whose careers overlapped with some of these people, early part of my career at KOAM and Dale's career at KOAM overlapped with the ends of some of theirs. So we worked with these people, and it was exhilarating to see them again and to see them young and in color and behind the scenes and laughing and doing all of these things. And when we put this on air, 5-part report, people can access, by the way, this through YouTube.
Oh, yeah. We'll link it in the description.
And I think if they just search under the Lost Reels, KOAM TV, they can see the 5 parts. And those who remember some of those shows, they'll be excited. Those who have no prior knowledge of these shows, I think will find it enlightening and kind of heartwarming.
Yeah.
And a little bit bittersweet, but mostly just nice, because it is our family, and these are kind of some of our ancestors in our KOAM family that many of us still feel a connection to. And I think all of us, the greater area, has a connection to.
Well, even, in our hallway at the Pittsburgh, we still have old pictures and things like that. Mm-hmm. And, I didn't know many of those people, but their history resonates, and just to see that behind, I watched some of the Lost Reels, and like you said, kind of candid, just a family. They're just hanging out.
And we owe a great debt of gratitude to these people. They invented our industry. They had to make it up as they went along. They didn't have a template.
They didn't
have a roadmap.
Yeah.
Right? They were the pioneers. They had to figure it out. And they kind of laid down a map for the rest of us to follow and build upon.
Not to mention the aesthetic of the time. Just I watched
you
the
saw
party
the way
one.
They dressed.
It's just the elegance of it, and we talk now about how small cameras are and how high tech, but it's just these huge honking machines.
Yeah, and you see women in pearls and men with their suits and cigars.
I did see the cigars that made me laugh. Just all hanging out. Christmas dinner with cigars, but
it was a formal affair, but it was all right in our studio. The same one where the very first TV image in this area was broadcast in 1953, and the same one that we use every day, the same one that I've worked in now for decades. It's that same room. And when I work there, sometimes I reflect on all of that history and all of the information that was broadcasted. All these generations of people from that same room of that same building.
There's for people who haven't seen our studio, there's steps that walk down. You walk down to the steps. It's just kind of a different space. It's like once you walk through the threshold, it's on.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite? Because like I said, it's always been the same room. But do you have a favorite set over the years that you have been here, or would you say like the most recent one, or was there one year where like, man, I really liked that set? It just
the sets have changed a lot, and they've changed positions in the studio a lot. They'd be on one end of the studio or another.
Mm-hmm.
A favorite generally is whatever the most recent is, because generally it's the most technologically up to date.
Yeah,
allows us to do different things. For a lot of years, I used to sit behind a desk. Generally
really?
With a co-anchor. Yeah, it seems odd now because now we stand behind a desk.
For the longest time.
And I prefer standing, actually. It does change my day. I stand now for a couple hours a day more than I used to, just by virtue of the fact that I anchor, minimum of 3 newscasts a day.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know that I have a favorite set. I'll tell you, one of the early weather sets that we found on the lost reels was it was just a simple weatherboard. Now it's all electronic, and we use green screen, and we have actually for a number of years. But this was a grease pencil map. It was a map on a glass board where the anchor would use a grease pencil to kind of put it
literally mark
graphics
all over
on there, right? And Jim Hollis on this video or on this film was the weather forecaster on that. He went on to have a Hall of Fame career at WIBW as an anchor. I called Jim and I told him we had this film, and he commented a little bit on the technology and how primitive it was, and the set in some ways was primitive, but it was cutting edge in its time.
Oh yeah, and it kind of had an elegance to it. Or even too, it's not, it's older for my time, but like, late 70s, early 80s. We used a bit for the promo for this podcast. It was like the introductions. It's like the introductions just kind of had a different feel to them.
Right, the music, the pacing, the look of it. Yes, and I'll tell you something, Lance. Someday, whatever we're doing today will seem the same way.
Oh, I'm sure.
Because the technology changes, and you think, wow, did we really do it that way back in 2022? Because, things move on. Our TV station, little known fact, is probably the first station in the country to use live weather radar. We think that's true. No one disputes it that we can find.
Can't challenge it.
But way back in the day, shortly after the station went on air, some engineers had taken a radar that was off of a World War II era bomber, a plane, and put it on top of the station. It was turned upside down, and then they had a screen in the studio, just a little round screen that had this swirling, this image, and a camera would be fixed on that. And it was showing radar, and they would use that to show where storms were moving in.
Wow.
Now, of course, every station has had that for years and years and years, but no one else had it before KOAM did it.
I mean, that would have blown someone's mind, seeing that, for the first time, coming, they're like, that is live, like, I don't know. I think Doug and I talked about on the previous Behind the Weather about how long they used to have to wait for data. And so, now it's just a whole different world.
Now it's instantaneous, right?
Instantaneous. Wow. Well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we're going to talk about some of your history in relation to the station and kind of where TV's going. So we'll be right back right after this.
This podcast is brought to you by Grand Lake Casino. Enjoy the best gaming in the tri-state area. Visit GrandLakeCasino.com for current promotions and entertainment. Grand Lake Casino, where friends play. Highway 10 north of Grove, Oklahoma.
Welcome back. Again, here hanging out at JB's downtown. We're talking a little history, and we got to talk about your history. You always like to talk about all the other people and how interesting they are, but we think you're pretty interesting.
Pretty old. I have a lot of history.
A lot of history. No, you still got plenty of history left. We were just in our break talking. We want to take it from the very beginning. We're kind of doing it the opposite of with Doug's. Doug's we started the beginning, and now we're kind of taking it full circle.
Okay.
So, when you were younger, did this what you always wanted to do?
Always, no. I think my first career ambition was that I was going to be a cowboy.
That'd be pretty good job.
Yeah, I think you talk about Doug. I think Doug mentioned that he wanted to ride a garbage truck.
Yeah, he wanted to be like a
And,
trash man.
If you're a kid, riding a truck, that's pretty cool. But what about riding a horse?
Yeah.
So, but shortly after I gave up my cowboy ambitions, I think I knew I wanted to be a writer. I had been encouraged by some teachers at a young age, and I just enjoyed the process of writing. I enjoyed stories, particularly true stories.
Yeah.
And that's what journalism is, right? And so, I drifted into that, through high school. When I went to college, University of Central Missouri, I went there with the idea of getting a journalism degree, thinking I was going to be a print journalist. By the way, broadcasting hadn't really particularly interested me, or I'm not even sure it even entered my mind as an option. I just wanted to write. I wanted to write for maybe a newspaper or a magazine. I wanted to document stories. And when I was in college, I was fortunate to have some really excellent professors. One of them, Dr. Kuldip Rampal, who was born in India and educated in London, and I think worked for the New York Times.
Wow.
And he taught news writing. And I remember first day of class, Lance, he had told us, he said, be prepared, because some days you're going to walk in here and I'm going to say, leave this room, you're going to go out with a notepad and a pen and take notes and get quotes, and then by the end of this class period, you will have to write a news story, at least one full typewritten page, back in the day when there were things called typewriters.
Oh, yeah. That would be difficult.
Yeah, and the class period was less than an hour, but he would do that, and we would learn to write fast by necessity. Think fast and write fast.
Yeah.
A law professor, a mass comm law professor, this was a class that we always put off till everybody put it off to their senior year because it was the hardest one. The guy taught it. He taught it like we were law students. If he would say, what's the significance of New York Times versus Sullivan, you better know it. And he told us on day one, he says, and by the way, everybody memorize the First Amendment to the Constitution. And because if I call on you randomly at any point in this class, you better be able to stand up and recite it. And you need to know it by tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
But some great instructors.
Yeah.
And I was trying to get experience when I was in college. And I worked on the campus magazine called The Medium. I was photo and layout editor, spent a lot of time in dark rooms, took a lot of photos. We get extra credit if I can. Anytime you get a photo published in the local newspaper. I was writing for cable TV news broadcast. I was the police beat reporter. I'd go down to the police station every day and I'd talk to the woman behind the desk, and she would, let me look at the police reports, and I'd take notes for stories. And, I did the same sort of thing with the campus radio station. I was a DJ for a time. I was gradually drifting into broadcasting almost by accident because that's where my opportunities were.
Yeah.
And our station, I guess it was my senior year, just before my senior year, we put a PBS station on the air at the university, KMOS TV, Central Missouri, Channel 6. And we had a weekly news magazine that I started writing for and eventually in reporting for and then anchoring for. And they had me hosting telethons. And the general manager there was named John Bradley. He had been a war photographer, filmmaker, documentarian in World War II. He'd been talked out of retirement to come back and be the GM for this new PBS station.
Wow.
He was a great guy, great instructor, taught a lot about shooting stories and how to tell stories visually. And I've been putting in so many hours there. And I remember one day John came to me and said, Dow, I'm sorry, but we've got you on the paid staff, but I can only get clearance to pay you for, I don't know, 60 or 80 hours a month or whatever. And I was thrilled. I thought, whoa, you're kidding me? Because he knew I was putting in a lot more hours than that, but I've been doing it free.
Yeah.
I thought, you're going to pay me for that? Yes, thank you, John. I'd been working, my senior year in college, a tornado, actually two tornadoes hit our city of License in Sedalia, Missouri, and took us off the air, hit our broadcast tower. And John said, Dow, when we go back on the air, we estimate it's going to be in a week. We need a documentary on this tornado that has hit the town, and I want you to produce it and write it and narrate it. And so, okay. And we had a team of photographers who went out and shot stuff. And I remember spending a lot of hours going through the tape and transcribing interviews and racing the clock. And this was getting close to graduation. I almost missed the opportunity to pick up my graduation gown because I had forgotten that there was a deadline, and I was late at night. I was editing, trying to get this done before the station went back on the air. But got it done. An hour-long documentary that we.
So you were going to school and working on this documentary. At this, basically working.
In fact, even after I graduated, John, he hired me to, until I found a job, to produce another documentary. This was on hot air ballooning. It was a big festival in central Kansas, 50, 100 balloonists, I don't know, from all over the country.
Yeah.
Said it'd be a great documentary subject. He gave me a flat fee. It was me and another guy. We were both the photographers on this and interviewers on this, and John, and we stayed in like a trailer for several days, just shooting the stuff, going on balloon rides, and then producing an hour-long documentary.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it beat flipping burgers for the summer.
Yeah,
as far
no
as
kidding.
I
would say so.
It didn't pay as well, by the way. But yeah, that was until I found a summer job, or found a more permanent job, which wasn't until October after I graduated in the spring. And that was at I actually got I'd seen an ad. I've been sending out audition tapes, sending out like videotapes of your work to everybody and to every TV station.
And you were in Sedalia at the time. And you were
I was in Warrensburg.
Warrensburg.
The university was. The city of license was Sedalia. Yeah. I was living at home with my folks in Holden, Missouri at that time. There had been an ad for a TV station in Joplin, and I responded to it, but it wasn't KOAM. It was a competing station. I guess it doesn't matter if I say the station.
No, yeah, it's fine.
So, it was KODE, Channel 12.
Really?
And so I drove down to KOAM, and I interviewed with the then news director, Dave Kester. And I was trying to sell him on me, and he was trying to sell me on the station. And he would do it this way. He took me around, and he showed me the station's cars, and he said, look at this. Our fleet of cars is almost as large as the cars over at KOAM. And he says, oh, and by the way, we have a new live van, and it's going to be just as good as the one at KOAM. And on he was talking about comparing his station to KOAM. I had never been to Joplin before. I didn't know.
Had no idea.
I had never heard of KOAM.
Yeah.
But indirectly, unintentionally, Dave was kind of selling me on his competitor. It's like, he was trying to sell me the off-brand cola by comparing himself to Coke. So, and Dave offered me a job before I left. And I said, look, can I think about this a little bit? And when do you need to know? He said, I'll give you a couple days. I say, cool. So before I left Joplin, I found a payphone and a phone book back in the days when such things existed.
Yep, I had to go on the search.
And I called KOAM and I said, look, you don't know me. I know you're not advertising for a position, but I'm looking for a job. I happen to have some audition tapes and resumes. Can I come by?
Wow, just come unannounced.
Unannounced. And they said, we don't have a lot of time. I said, I won't take much time. I said, okay, yeah, come on by. And they looked at my stuff. I interviewed. This was the news director, Karen Adams, and then she had a boss, director of news services. I left the tape. Said, we'll get back with you. And the next day, I think it was, KOAM called and said, we didn't have a position, but we're going to offer you one.
Wow.
And I said, I'll take it. And and by the way, KOAM was offering me less money than, wasn't much difference, but the pay wasn't the relevant point for me. I felt a connection. I just felt like this is where I belonged. There was something right. And then I had to call Dave and I said, I'm not able to accept your offer. Thank you for the opportunity. And then I had to add, and by the way, yeah, I'm going to accept one of your competitor. The conversation from that point was very short.
I can imagine.
Thank you, goodbye.
Goodbye.
He's a nice guy. And,
Yeah.
And I sincerely was grateful for the opportunity. But that's how my career started at KOAM.
And then that was in 80?
October of 1980.
80.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, like you said, it was a different time. I mean, the equipment that you carry around was leaps and bounds larger than it was today.
Yeah, it was huge. Giant cameras, and they were connected by a cable to what we called a deck, which was this big recorder that would carry around in a canvas bag with a strap that had this large videotape.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, I think it weighed about 40 pounds total. I'll tell you an early story with this stuff. This is, I think, my first year at the station. I was covering a story about some prison escapees out of Kansas. I think 7 of them had broken out, and by the time they'd gotten to southwest Missouri, there were 2 remaining. One of them was a known killer, killed a police officer.
Oh, man.
And National Guard had been called in. This is in McDonald County, densely wooded, hilly McDonald County, Missouri. And one of our competitors was able to get a helicopter to go up and show the scene. And I thought this is an important aspect of the story. You had to show the terrain and why this is so difficult, why it's so easy for these guys to hide. But news director wouldn't let me get a helicopter. So I decided on the next best thing. I saw that there was a forest ranger lookout tower. You know, these things, I don't know, they're maybe equivalent of a 10-story building or
easily,
more.
Yeah.
And so I had this deck and this camera equipment, 40 pounds or so of camera equipment. So I'm just going to climb that tower. And
Just go right up there.
Yeah, it was something maybe a little bit more than a ladder, but less than a staircase. And when I got to the top, there was a guy up at the top, and he was impressed that I had climbed that thing carrying all that equipment. Obviously, I was in better shape in those days, and he let me in, and then the highway patrol helicopter was circling the tower beneath. So not only did I have an aerial shot, I had a shot looking down at a helicopter. I wanted to beat the competition. And also in that same story, Associated Press, United Press International, various television stations from all around the area, print and broadcast, had sent reporters down there, and they were getting motel and hotel rooms in McDonald County and the Knoll area, Pineville area. But I talked to the sheriff, and he says, look, these guys are hiding someplace, we think, on this mountain, this hill. And they're going to move, I believe, sometime at night. And I said, if they move at night, these people in the motels, they're going to miss the story. They'll be there for the news conference, but they're not going to get the video. So I said, so I'm going to park my car at the mobile command post, the National Guard mobile command post, and I'm sleeping in my car because when they move, I want to be there.
Oh my gosh.
And the next morning, shortly before dawn, they were moving. They had stopped a train because a couple of people had apparently hopped on board this train, and they thought they just have to be the escapees. They had stopped the train, and I got in my car, get in this line of police cars and military vehicles that are going very fast to a destination, and I just step on the gas and go as fast as this little 4-cylinder vehicle will take me, trying to keep up. And I was the only vehicle that got into this area before they blocked it off with roadblocks.
Yeah.
It was the only news vehicle they got in. So I thought, okay, now I'm going to get this video. No one else is going to get it, but I still have to shoot it. And the train had been stopped at the top of this hill, this ridge area. We were at the bottom of it. All these National Guardsmen and police officers are running up this hill. They have bulletproof vests, by the way. I don't, but I have 40 pounds of equipment, and I'm running up it. Waist-high grass and trees. And I get up to the train, and I know that the action is going on just on the other side of the train. The train has stopped, and some National Guard members say, "Sorry, we cannot let you pass this." And I think, you got to let me pass this.
I gotta get it.
I've run 99% of a marathon. I've got to get
no
to the
kidding.
finish line. And they said, "Nope, you're not going to." So okay. And I went a little further down the tracks, and I waited till their back was turned, and I crawled under the train.
With the equipment?
With
so
the
you like
equipment.
what, you just like push it through?
Yeah, pushed or pulled and get it through. Yeah.
Man.
But I wanted the shot.
That is
I had
dedicated.
to have the shot.
Yeah.
And on the other side, when I get there, they have one of the escapees, and he's handcuffed, and he's sitting down at a tree, and I'm getting shots of him with these law officers around him, and then out of the woods, a group of law officers come, and they're escorting the other escapee, also handcuffed, and I'm getting the video, and I'm so excited. I know nobody else has gotten this. And then I have to get this video back to the car, and it's starting to rain. And this equipment, in addition to being heavy, it's very sensitive.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the tape in there.
Tape, moisture, that's a deadly enemy, along with smoke and dust and all sorts of things.
Yeah.
Stuff notoriously would break down. And it's starting to rain, and I'm sheltering this thing. I've got to get back to the car, and I'm running back down the hill. I'm trying to get out of the rain. And I take that tape out, and I'm letting it out to dry, and I'm afraid to play it. I don't know if it's going to be okay or not. I wait until it dries, the equipment dries, and I play it, and it's there.
Oh.
And I have this shot. And I told the news director, and she was excited. And
How could you not be at that point?
And I was going to tell that story, and says, "And by the way, we want to put you on the set tonight. We want you to anchor this story and tell this story." And I said, "Yeah, cool. I got to go by my apartment first. I kind of need to shave and shower. I spent the night in the car." But yeah, so we got that. That was one of the early
One of your first
misadventures with that tape equipment.
Oh my gosh.
When I got the job, they called me E&G director, electronic news gathering director, which is kind of a glorified title for the guy who had to go in early and check out all of the equipment, make sure it was working, and assign it to the reporters. And one of my responsibilities was that I operated the microwave van because we were doing live reports every day at noon. I got great training, by the way, from a guy I should mention. His name is Jerry Waltrip. He was a reporter, somewhat considerably older than me. He still lives in Pittsburgh. I run into him once in a while. He's a great guy.
That's awesome.
But he taught me on reporting and running the microwave van.
On the live van.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And frequently at noon, I would be both the live van operator and the reporter. I'd just shoot myself reporting live.
Yeah.
Early on, this is, again, I don't know, I'm probably telling too many of these stories about
No,
it.
you're fine.
I don't know. This was my first year there. Operating the live van, you had to sometimes get in a test signal from various locations for in anticipation of a live shot that you would be doing the next day. And I was doing that at the North Park Mall, the parking lot of North Park Mall in Joplin. We're going to be doing a live shot the next day. I had to get in a test, make sure that it was okay. And to do that, those days you had to climb up on top of the van and you pull a series of cables, and this telescoping pole, this antenna would rise up maybe 30 feet above the thing, and then in order to bring it down, you had to bring it down physically, and you had a generator. And anyway, I'm trying this at different spots around the parking lot until finally we get a signal in. I think great, because I've got a lot of things to do. I've got an interview I'm late for. And
Are you still like all suited up? Like, I mean, in your nice attire, you're climbing up on this
In those
thing?
days, since we're both photographer and reporter, I would never say we wore nice attire. I know that a news director sometimes would complain about that.
Yeah.
Say, look at how nice the reporters are at the Kansas City station. I say, yeah, and they're getting paid Kansas City wages. And by the way, they have a photographer who's wearing jeans and a T-shirt.
Yeah.
And we're being everything. But yeah, I was hot and sweaty. But here's the point: I was pulling out of the parking lot at the North Park Mall, and after raising and lowering and raising and lowering and raising and lowering this 30-foot pole, I had forgotten to lower it.
Oh, no.
So there are a lot of reasons you shouldn't drive down a range line with a 30-foot pole at the top of it.
I could think of just a couple.
What would you think would be the number one reason?
I would think that there's a lot of things that are hanging over
Very
on
good, Lance.
streets.
You know what the first of those is?
Street light.
Oh, very good.
Winner.
Yeah, I discovered that as I was pulling onto range line, and I felt this kind of jerk of the van.
It's pretty instant.
Yes, and then suddenly everything registered. And I look in my rearview mirror and I see most of a 30-foot pole crashing behind me to the ground, and a street light crashing beside me.
It took it completely off?
It took off most of it.
Oh, gosh.
And it took down the traffic light. And I had been working at the station for less than a year. This van was worth more than I was going to make in several years.
Yeah.
I was parked in the busiest road in our entire viewing area, driving a billboard,
With our
obstructing
station.
traffic. Fortunately, no one was hurt, because apparently the other cars around me, they were aware enough to see this fool driving down range line.
With a 30-foot tower.
A 30-foot tower. And I got on we had radios at that time, the CB radios. I called Kara and I told her what happened. She, said, wait there, called the police, did an accident report. I was calm because I knew that I was going to be fired. There was no suspense.
You're like, that's it.
I still had a fresh resume tape and resumes, but what I didn't know was that the station was wanting to update that live van. The technology had changed a bit, and now insurance was going to pay for it. So unintentionally, fortunately, for me anyway, and I guess for the station, I had provided them with a new microwave.
A little upgrade.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And I mean, you've probably seen a lot of technology changes in your day, I would imagine. I mean, from going from that to,
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, different formats of videotape.
even that, yeah.
Large, smaller. Of course, then to digital, and there is no tape. The cameras got smaller and smaller and more reliable, more portable, more light sensitive. It wasn't just the cameras that we carried around. We had to carry around large light bags with lights and these big battery belts that we wear around our waist, like Batman utility belts that you would hook the lights into. So, yeah, that technology changed. I mentioned typewriters. Have you ever used a typewriter?
I have never used a typewriter. I'm only 27, or turning 27 this month, I should say.
You have never.
I've never used.
Have you ever seen a
I
typewriter?
have seen one. My grandparents had one. So I have seen one. I've felt it, like the tactile.
you felt it. Wow.
But I've never actually used one for any like practical
Tactile.
purpose. Yeah.
It was that.
Yeah.
And I know it's primitive by today's standards, but it was a different type of writing on a typewriter.
Oh, yeah.
Because Today, of course, you can copy and paste, you can rearrange, you can delete, you can add in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
If you're typing on a typewriter, you had to think through before you started.
Yeah, I feel like that could be said for a lot of, those kind of analog type of things. Film, for example, in digital cameras now. I mean, heck, our small camera that we're recording with, you can just shoot pictures all day, provided you have the memory. But with film, it's so, permanent. It's imprinted on that film, or like a typewriter. It's printing
Right.
on
And
that
we
paper.
talk about film, generically. This is before I started there, but back in the very early days of TV at KOAM, before videotape, they used film. That is film that they would have to shoot the news story, take it back to a dark room, process, quickly dry with a fan till they get it on the news on time. When they would edit it, they would have to physically cut and splice film, put
Physical
it on a projector.
pieces of film.
Yeah.
I mean, it blows my mind.
Imagine that.
And
yeah.
where we're at now, like I said, is very quick and not easy necessarily in all regards, but it's just definitely.
It makes the job. It allows us to do more with less.
Mm-hmm.
We are more efficient. We're faster. What we can do is better. Things like teleprompter, for example. Now, when I started there, we had teleprompter, but it was a very different sort of teleprompter because we were typing on paper, and the paper it came in like sheets of 5 or something. So you would type on a page, and it had copies that would be automatically made.
Really?
Yes, of the others down. They'd be dimmer
Yeah.
and dimmer as it would go, but the top one was the teleprompter page, and we would physically take pieces of paper, tape them together for the teleprompter, and then they would be taped to a conveyor belt in the studio, and a camera was looking down at them, and we would kind of roll that, scroll it. Sometimes you would, go off to the side, and you'd kind of lose it. If there was a change to the script, it was just something that you had written in on the margins. But that was
Just a little
that was
bit.
early teleprompter.
My gosh. And so when did you, obviously you still do like investigative reports or special reports now and again, but when did you go to full-time anchoring?
See, well, I was weekend anchor first, and that started maybe a couple of years after I had been there. So I was then 24, 25. I was 22, almost 23. I became weeknight anchor at your age. I was 27. But I continued reporting as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a different sorts of responsibilities. Not as a news writer still, as an anchor, in fact, writing more and rewriting a lot
Yeah.
of scripts, and also as a sort of coach and instructor to other reporters and photographers and editors.
Do you still enjoy writing more than, do you still kind of enjoy that aspect?
Yeah, I do. I enjoy the challenge of it.
Yeah.
I enjoy the creative process, and when you write for television as opposed to print, it is a different sort of process, a different sort of storytelling process, because you have all these different ingredients. You write with the visuals in mind, for example. You can tell stories in ways that you can't with just a printed word. Your time constraints are much shorter.
Yeah.
But you have all of these elements. For example, a quote in print can say something, but the sound bite of that same quote can say more. You hear the expression, you hear the emphasis, sometimes the emotion. Maybe you see the tear that you can't quite capture with a quote. At a hot air balloon festival I shot in college, well, I can describe, I suppose, what it looks like to see 50 balloons rising at sunrise in a field. But no words that I could write are as powerful as that single image.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I enjoy the process. When I talk to kids, and I talk to lots of kids in classrooms, different age levels, I kind of equate it to when you were in grade school and you go to art class and you have the colored paper and maybe the crayons and the magic marker
Yeah.
and maybe the glue, and you have all of these different elements that you can bring together to tell a story. And that's the sound and the visuals, the natural sound. That is what we call nat sound. So you don't just see the explosion, you hear it.
All those little nuances that kind
Right,
of really
that-
bring you in.
Right, that
Yeah.
tell the story in a way that's more visceral than just the written word. Written word is, I don't want to diminish that.
Oh, of course not. No.
And by the way, our job now has evolved more toward print in some ways, and print has evolved more into ours because everybody now has websites. They have these different platforms to tell their stories. So we also are telling stories in printed form in addition to the visuals. And the print media are kind of doing the reverse.
weird
Most
how-
of them have video platforms now.
They found that like middle ground.
Right.
A couple questions that I always had, and we'll kind of talk about the future, but like you talk about the visual aspect and how moving it can be and stuff like that, and how has it been for you through the years on such, I mean, massive events in, you know, not only, you know, U.S. history, but human history. I mean, as far as like, you know, Challenger or, you know, the Twin Towers or things like that. You know, obviously when you talked about the tornado, you said you're kind of taken back just because it's so close to home. But for these large scale events, you know, how does it affect you? How do you feel about it? Because we talked too, I think previously, about how, you know, viewers can always turn off the TV,
Right.
but you have to, you know, experience and be able to properly tell these people, you know, what is happening.
Well, I think in some ways every story is or should be about people.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, the emotion of it is a central part of most of them. And it could be the Twin Towers. It can be a terrorist attack. It can be a natural disaster like a tornado. It can be a fire. But ultimately, the story is really about how that affects people and how they respond to it.
Yeah.
And whether that's a largely sad story or a happy, celebratory story,
Yeah.
it is about people. I don't know if that's an answer to your question.
That makes sense. No, because I mean, and that really sums up, you know, almost our whole podcast. Really, over the whole time, we've really just been talking about different people. Yes, they've done X, Y, Z, or they've been there for X, Y, Z, but at the end of the day, it's just, you know, people who have lived their lives in some shape or form.
And how we identify with that and how we learn from them, from what they've done well and maybe the mistakes they've
Yeah.
made. Right.
And then my personal, this is a question I think I've had the whole time. I don't know why I didn't bring it up sooner, but your sign off,
Oh, yeah.
I think, is very iconic.
Well, Walter Cronkite had the really iconic
Well,
one.
okay, that's fair.
He would end it with this, and that's the way it is.
That's the way it is.
Yeah, this developed maybe when I was a weekend anchor or became a weeknight anchor or somewhere in between. I decided I needed to end every newscast with something more than just "see you later." You
Yeah.
know, ta-ta. And part of the thinking on that, I think, was I realized, hey, maybe I'm going to be doing this for a couple of years.
Oh, yeah.
You know, maybe.
Just maybe.
Maybe. And maybe if you say something once or 100 times, it doesn't matter much. But if you say it 1,000, 10,000, over the course of generations, maybe the message matters a little
Yeah.
bit. You know, it's in the same way that, you know, you can create or destroy something suddenly, like with a dump truck or a wrecking ball, but sometimes things are built up or erode slowly, like a stalactite or a river delta or a Grand Canyon. And this sign-off is something that is going to be subtle over maybe a long, long period of time. So I wanted it to be something, I think it evolved a little bit. I think, first of all, I just said, make it great. That didn't sound right. And I think an English teacher pointed out to me, that seems kind of grating, so to speak. I thought she's right.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to just say, have a good day because that wasn't empowering enough. I way overthought this, by the way.
Oh, I mean,
Okay, but
makes sense.
make it a great evening. Puts it in our hands. Sometimes news isn't just something that happens to us. It's something that we have influence over.
Mm-hmm.
Race relations, war, violence, generosity. That's something that collectively we control. And even if it's something like a tornado that we don't, our response to it is up to us.
How we handle it.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's make it a great evening. And then I added, let's make it a great evening. And the reason for that is because I didn't want this to be lecturing. This isn't something I'm telling you to do. This
Do
is
it.
something I include myself
Yeah.
in this too. This is up to all of us. Let's make it a great evening. Or the 10 o'clock, let's make it a great tomorrow. Or sometimes I might amend it, let's make it a great new year. Let's make it a safe and great 4th of July
Yeah.
most recently. And there was a time after the tornado when I changed it because I knew that tomorrow wasn't going to be great, but I would say, let's make it a better tomorrow. And we worked our way back to great.
And that can be, I mean, in just different, however kind of inflection you use can be empowering. It can be, somber. It just, and that just fits so well.
As I said, I way overthought it, and now I've way over explained it. But you
Hey,
asked the question.
I am satisfied with that answer. And you've said it thousands upon thousands of times, and you'll probably say it, a few thousand more at least.
We'll see.
Hopefully.
We'll see.
Where do you kind of think TV is, going? I mean, like you kind of touched on a little bit because it's
Yeah.
going to more that digital space, but obviously there's always that place for local
I hope so.
broadcast.
I hope so. It's now with different social media, of course, everybody can be something equivalent to a broadcaster.
Yeah.
But I think news consumers, at least on the national level, have become more fractured.
Yeah.
Many of them seeking out just a verification of their own opinion, and so that creates that sort of echo chamber.
Yeah,
but,
I can. Yeah.
But I hope that local news is an exception to that.
Yeah.
I think that as we move into other platforms, different ways of telling the news, more timely ways, how we can reach people instantly through various means, through podcasts like this,
Crazy
more
thought.
long form ways that we never could before. So it does expand our possibilities, expands our reach, not just within the range of our broadcast signal, but to anybody who has access to the internet.
Yeah.
But I do think the local newscast, in some ways, it's always been kind of the community campfire at the end of the day.
That's kind of what I was thinking. We're really not, up on some pedestal, really. We're right there. And I think that's really, if anything, will keep it, be its lifeline for the future. Is the fact that we are just on that, strive to be on that level.
Kind of a community touchstone, something that
Yeah.
community shares, one thing that they have in common. And, that's step one to making it a great tomorrow.
Well, I feel like we have to end it with that. Thank you guys. I mean, I'm pretty sure I've said it, not thousands, but a lot of times. We're so appreciative for everyone listening, or if you're watching on the KOAM Plus app, because that's what makes this possible. We had a blast with Doug. I've had a blast with you, Dow.
I've enjoyed it.
I
Thank
mean,
you.
as a young person, as a young fry, it's cool to see, that history and, how really we're still the same, even if the technology's changed.
Appreciate the
It's down to
opportunity,
us.
sincerely. Thanks, Lance.
Thank you to our sponsors, CDL Electric, Grand Lake Casino, and our location sponsor, JB's Downtown. Make sure you check all of those respective companies out on Facebook or check out their websites. Not a lot of details on our next series, but hopefully we'll have stuff on our own Facebook, KOAM News Now, and you can check us out online at koamnewsnow.com/podcast. And I think that's it. We'll see you next time.
I chose to invest money into a renewable energy resource like solar panels, so that I can sleep at night knowing that I am doing my part to create a cleaner earth for my grandchildren. CDL made that decision easier by educating me on how I can save money and how renewable energy can save the environment. Because what I do today matters tomorrow. Call CDL today to see how you can make a difference.
Thank you for listening to KOAM-presents. For the latest content and local news, weather, and sports, please go to koamnewsnow.com.